So the first thing I want to address, okay, is a little area for resources, okay, and we talk a lot about that. So if you want to get familiar with what you want, some of the things that you want to read about of what you can and cannot do, the Florida Realtor Association has a really good article, and I'm going to send this out and as a link, so you'll get an email with a document with a link to this. But this has like frequently asked questions, what you need to know about the buyer broker agreement, and it's got there's 22 or 26 different questions, 29 different questions, 30 different questions. So it's a great read. I highly recommend that you read through this. It'll help you kind of understand things. I'm going to break it down very simple today. The first thing is you can't show a property now without an agreement with the buyer. I'm going to repeat that. You can't show a property without an agreement. Now, there's two types of agreements that we're going to talk about today. The first one's called a showing agreement, which allows you to show the property to a particular buyer and have an outline of an agreement. And I call that like dating, okay? That's just the entry level agreement that we're going to go over that allows you to show a property to somebody. It doesn't have a lot of teeth. It's a low bar for people to be able to hurdle to get into that contract very easily. It's the one that I'm going to start with, okay? So that's called a showing agreement, all right? The next thing is you want to be able to move them from a showing agreement to a buyer broker agreement. Or some of you out there might go directly for the buyer broker agreement once you get comfortable with the form. We're going to go over the buyer broker agreement. We're going to fill one of those out today. You're going to have an example of the buyer broker agreement. So you're going to know how to fill out two agreements to show property. One, the showing agreement, and we'll talk about the differences between the showing agreement and the buyer broker agreement. But this is a great resource here for why you have to have the buyer broker agreement. Okay. There's also a page here, and I'm going to send this link as well, and it has all the different updates and all the different versions of the documents that they've changed this year because of the big law change. So you can come in here and you can go to the red lines of some of these documents, and so you'll have that link. So if you want some more reading, some official stuff, this is the material that we're going to be implementing this stuff today. All right, so as we get started, we're gonna first start here, and this is a work in progress. We're going to start with the showing agreement. It's a great starting point. When should you use this form? Well, let's say someone calls you up and they want you to, on the sign, and they want to see the property. Okay, so you could use this form for people that are sign calls. Now, I'm not talking about just your listing. I'm talking if you pick them up as a sign call and you're showing them other properties that you don't have listed. You don't have to have an agreement if you're showing your own listing to a buyer. Okay, so I'll repeat that. You don't have to have an agreement if you're showing your own listing to a buyer. But if you're showing any other listing to the buyer, then you have to have an agreement. So let's say you got a Zillow lead, or you met some people at open house and they want to see a couple houses after the open house down the street. And you don't want to get into a whole buyer broker pitch. You can use the showing agreement to just get them in the door. Okay, you can set this agreement up for just one day. You can set it up for a week. So it's a great form to get started, take a lot of pressure off the buyer. Since again, we cannot show a property unless we have a written agreement with the buyer. All right. If we're just meeting them for the first time, maybe you're taking them out to show them 1 to 6 properties. All right. So this is when we're going to use this form. That's the first form we're going to kind of talk about real quick. So I'm going to jump right in here to Authentisign, and I have a showing agreement that I sent out to everybody already that I already pre-filled out, and then we'll talk about filling it out together, and I'll show you how to find that in Authentisign. First thing, I use Happy Gilmore. Here's my customer's name. One of the things that you can do is print this showing agreement out, leave the buyer's name blank, leave the dates blank, but go ahead and put in White Sands Realty Group, and you can handwrite in the dates if you're out on the fly. You know, maybe you make, 5 to 6 copies of this, and you have it in a folder in your professional folder. And you can see here the time period. I just picked a week, right? So I'm only doing 7 days. I'm not locking them into a long-term anything. It's just, hey, I just met them. Hey, this agreement's for a week. We're going to go out and look at some houses and see if we like each other, see if you like the houses, see if we can work together. Here in the agreement, I put all properties shown. As I show them a property, I'm just going to add the address to my form, have them initial the form. So I'm going to add each specific address to the form as we go through the showings throughout the day, so that they know I showed them that property. I just jot down the address, boom, it's right into the form. Or I just leave it blank, like this, all properties that I showed them. But if you want to be very specific, you can add the address as you go throughout the day, have the initial off as you go through. And again, you guys can read the detail stuff. When you get into the form, this just talks about your broker's obligations, the customer's obligations, compensation, right? So for this form, I'm going to make my compensation 3%. Now you can do 2%, you can do 2.5%, you can do whatever you're comfortable with. Some people out there are doing 5% because you can't go up. If the compensation is more on the property, you're not allowed to go up and raise your compensation to make an offer on that property, is the technical rule. So I'm going for 3%. And then in additional terms, for the simplicity of this form, I'm not putting any additional terms in this area. Eventually, if you want to get bold, you can charge a retainer that's non-refundable for taking up your time. I'm not there yet, so I'm going to not charge a retainer. I'm going to charge 0. If you don't want to work with me, no problem, right? I want to earn your business. And again, the normal paragraph for disputes when there's an agreement, and then acknowledgement of modifications to this agreement. And it spells out brokerage commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. So this form can be modified at a later time. I'm going to tell them that. I'm going to say, hey, listen, I can modify this form. We're going to actually sign a buyer-broker agreement once we find a property that you want to buy, but we don't have to do that today. We're just going to start out here with this, just the showing agreement. This allows me to get you in the door, right? And it protects you and it protects me. And if you're interested in that property, then I'll find, we'll take the next step and we'll go from there. So that's how this form's going to be filled out. And it's fairly straightforward on the showing thing. So this form can be found in the showing agreement is what the name of it is called. And so you can, this is the one that I actually already did. So you can come here to forms and type in your showing agreement. And then you'll have your showing agreement forms. I have a couple that I've already started with. And that I started filling out. So once you pull the form up, again, you can put the buyer's name in, the time here, The brokerage goes here. Again, all properties that I showed. My minimum commission that I'm willing to start off the process is 3%. I can modify this whole form later. I'm not charging a retainer. I'm not doing any additional terms. And then I can have the customer sign and I can sign. So this is what the form looks like once it gets signed by everybody, and then you can go to work. And you can add properties to this. You don't have to sign a new one if the timeline is still there. You can extend it. So there's all kind. It's just like a listing, right? You have a listing from one period to the next period. You can extend that listing. You can, it doesn't expire. You can, expand that expiration date. You can expand dates on this too. Cross out the date, write a new date, have everybody initial off on it, and there you go. All right, so I'm going to open this up for questions on this form. Who's got questions regarding the showing agreement form?
It's Janice.
Hey, Janice.
It's Janice. Is this something that I have to send to you or Michael? Do you keep it on file?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is when you go out and you show property, you have one of these agreements, then we're just going to have you hold this agreement and until at what time until you go to contract. We're not going to have you turn in these forms until you officially go to contract with that customer. Then you can turn in the form that you went to contract with them on.
Okay, thanks.
Tina, one question.
Yeah, Jason.
Under any circumstance, are we required to produce this for brokerage that we're working on a property with? I've heard of already Michael Saunders agents requesting BBAs and showing agreements from buyer's agents.
So the listing agent is not required. It's really not an agreement between their office and our office, right? I wouldn't turn in my buyer broker agreement or my showing agreement to the showing or the listing agent's office right away.
What they're saying is they want to make it part of the contract. So you have one of these in place, and yes, I'm with you. We wouldn't show them our listing agreement typically, but you have one of these in place. All the documents are going into the title company. They are asking for that to go with it.
Yeah, so you can make this part of the contract, or you don't have to make it part of the contract. So I can see where listing agents want to make it part of the contract. So I don't have a problem with it being made part of the contract, as long as everybody's in agreement with what form becomes part of the contract.
Got it.
Jason, I just did a contract with a Michael Saunders, a Sotheby agent up in Sarasota. And they did have me sign on my seller's behalf of the commission that she was paying. And he wanted that within the contract information sent to the attorney.
Are you talking about the brokerage to brokerage agreement or this or the BBA?
Yeah, actually it's the broker to broker agreement that I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, that I would expect, but this is basically like, producing proof that you have had something to show them around.
Yes, that's right. Yep. But yeah, those are coming, aggressively now, as Kano had mentioned earlier in the Tuesday meetings. But you're right. Yeah, I meant broker to broker.
Question, Rebecca.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the broker form, but we're again, I want to focus on the buyer broker agreement today at the moment. All right, so this is the first document you can start out with. That you if you want a simple form and not freak them out with the buyer broker agreement, you just want to show a house, this is where you start, okay? All right, so now we're going to move over to the exclusive buyer broker agreement, all right? So we're going to go through this form first, and then we're going to look at it in the system. So when would you use the buyer broker agreement? For serious buyers, all right? For serious buyers. Okay, they've agreed to work with you for a time period to find a home, right? So they're gonna team up with you, and you're gonna lock them into working with you for a month, or 60 days. You can do a week, you can do a day, but this is a more serious agreement. I'm gonna highly recommend that when you move them to this agreement, you express it in a way that it's serious. So you say, hey, listen, we can do a casual agreement, but when you get ready, we're going to do a buyer broker agreement again. It's a requirement that I need to do when you get serious. Now you can lock them in for a time period. Maybe they were a referral from one agent to another, or a past client and their family member. Referrals need to just go straight to buyer broker agreement. Don't even worry about the showing agreement. Get them their referral. They want to work with you. Go ahead and lock them into the buyer broker agreement. Okay. Maybe they're a listing that you have, and they're also going to buy something. Go ahead and have them sign a buyer broker agreement. Right. Go directly into the buyer broker agreement prior to having to do it later when they get ready to start to look, because you can put it the same time period as their listing. Go ahead and lock them in. So those are three that I thought of that you would probably want to use the buyer broker agreement right away, or when you move them over to a more serious buyer. All right, so let's jump back here and go through the form that I have filled out. And again, our buyer again is Happy Gilmore. And I'm using the buyer broker agreement that is a transaction broker. I'm not being a single agent with the rights of transition to transaction. I'm not being any of the other ones. I'm just being a transaction broker as a buyer's agent. Okay. Again, my time period might be like 90 days. I like to end all my agreements on the 30th of the month. Every listing I take ends on the 30th of the month. I'm going to do the same thing here with my buyer broker agreements. All my agreements end on the 30th of the month. That's just me personally, so that I know when my agreements are ending. I just need to figure out which month it is. What type of property? Well, I sell in 3 counties. So I'm going to put here Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte counties. This is the area that they're hiring me to look for property. So I don't have to be specific about a property. I'm just general area of where I'm looking. I keep this very broad. Okay. And again, it's got the broker's obligation. They bring in the fair housing, service providers. Now we got the customer's obligation, and then we move down here to retainer. Again, I put in 0. I want to earn their business. I want them to feel comfortable signing this. I'm like, look, I don't charge a retainer. You can cancel the contract at any time. You can fire me tomorrow if I'm not doing a good job. It doesn't cost you a penny, right? I want to take all the barriers down for me. Again, my compensation, I'm starting out at 3% for this particular form. And additional fees, I still left that blank. A protection period. So the protection period is, let's say I showed them a property and then they decided that they wanted to buy that property 20 days later. I'm protected up for 30 days past my agreement if I showed them that property. So, typically if that's left blank, the protection period, just like a listing, we have a protection period. If you showed the property to somebody and they came and bought the property after your listing expired, but it wasn't relisted, there's a protection period for someone that you actually showed the property to. And as I mentioned before, termination, cancellation, 0. I don't charge anything. I want to earn people's business. I want them to feel comfortable signing the document. I let them out whenever they want, because for me, it's not worth. I want to earn someone's business, and I want them to want to work with me because they know I'm professional, not because I got them tied up in a contract. That's a personal preference. You guys can do it how you like. Again, the normal dispute in this area. Assignment, it just talks about, the different assignments that the agreement can take on. For commissions, you can assign those. Now, I want you to notice here we got your brokerage relationship, and I mentioned that I'm a transaction broker, so it has all the duties in here that I need to. I have to. I gotta be honest, fairly accountable for all funds, use skill, care, and diligence in the transaction. Disclose all known material defects of the value of the property, which are not readily observed by the buyer. Present all offers and counter offers in a timely manner, and present everything in writing and everything. And I have limited confidentiality. Everything the buyer tells me, I'm just going to keep confident with them. I'm not going to share. Now, I want you to notice something here on number 13. Now, number 13, I've actually run this past an attorney, and the attorney says, yes, we can do this. We're allowed to modify buyer-broker agreements, and yes, we're allowed to put this information in here. They did tell me that is very specific to our MLS. So the MLS is going to write the rule of what you're allowed to put in here or not put in here. I did not check with our MLS whether we could put this here or not put this here, but legally, based on the attorney, we are allowed to put this into our buyer-broker agreement. So I'm going to read this to you and tell you why I put this in here. This agreement can be renegotiated at a later time, but prior to making an offer, an agent will find out if the seller or an seller's agent is offering any compensation on their property for sale. This information will be shared with the buyer before they make an offer on any property, so that they can move forward with the terms and conditions in the contract that best fit their needs. Now, this meets all the criteria to not talk about compensation. There's nothing in here that talks about the amount of compensation. It just says that I'm going to find out if compensation is being offered. And if it is being offered, I'm going to share that information with my buyer, so my buyer can then make a decision whether that's a property they want to look at or a property they don't want to look at. Because if they're offering compensation, I'm going to have a verbal conversation with them to let them know if the compensation is lower than 3%, I am happy to modify this agreement at the time of contract to bring it down to what the seller or the selling co-broke agent is offering. Because I want it to be in the best interest of my buyer, right? So I'm going to share with them the information I found, and I will lower my fee if it's in the best interest of the buyer. Now, if they're buying new construction, by the way, the rules are that you're not supposed to be able to charge them more than what you've agreed upon. But nothing says that you can't enter into a new agreement, okay? And we are allowed to modify that agreement, but there's a gray line there that says you're not allowed to charge them more than what's in this agreement. So if you're selling new construction and there's a bonus that they're paying, the way I have my agreement structured here, I would not get that bonus, okay? I would not get that bonus. But what I would do is I would find out if there is a bonus being offered, if it's new construction, and what that is, relay that information to my buyer and ask them if we can enter into a new buyer broker agreement, which is completely legal. and allow for the bonuses now that we know that there's not going to be any money out of pocket paid by the buyer. It's all going to be paid by the seller, and they're offering a bonus maybe on one of their inventory homes or something like that. So that's a way that you can come back and do it. You'll have to do a complete new agreement because the agreement says you can't modify this and charge more money. So let's just have a new agreement. Now, again, I think that might be a little gray area, but if the seller's in agreement with it, I don't see the legal ramification where if the buyer's in agreement with you making the bonus that's being offered by a builder, and they're not having to pay for it, and you have a new buyer broker agreement with the new amount in it. I think it's all disclosed. I think that we would be fine with that document. All right, so this is what this document looks like when you fill it out. So I'm going to kind of open this up. I see we got a couple questions. Dan asked if I could send the buyer broker have other terms filled out. Yes, I can. I'm gonna send these all these samples as well. So everybody's gonna get these samples. All right, so we're opening up one at a time. So we're gonna open up for questions regarding this form.
Got one.
Excellent, Jason. Let's go.
Got two actually. Can you hover back down to assignment? So the way I'm taking this is you could either say you have this all filled out, you got somebody in agreement, and you can't do the showing that day. You can assign it to somebody else, and then they can run with it.
That is correct. Or maybe the customer is, they're looking for their sister.
Right.
And now they want to assign the agreement. You're showing it to the party that's not going to be the one buying, but because we have to have it signed, they might, you can assign this to another party that's actually doing the purchasing.
And if the brokerage has an agreement and I can't do I can't take somebody out, but Roberta can for me, I can just have Roberta do it. She's at the brokerage.
That is correct.
And then on the bonus section,
we may even, hang on one second, you may even be able to assign it to an outside brokerage. Like, let's say you have an agreement to help them here in Sarasota, but they want to go to Naples all of a sudden and you don't work down there. Maybe you can assign this buyer broker agreement to work with them down in Naples to another agent.
Well, that opens up another whole line of questioning here. So is that how a referral will work? You need to get somebody in a buyer broker agreement first, or can you simply still collect a referral for sending people to an agent and then them getting them in a buyer broker or showing agreement?
So it can go either way, but I would recommend that you do it the other way, the more traditional way, where you do a referral to the other agent. That other agent enters into a new buyer broker agreement with that agent directly, and you have a referral agreement with that brokerage. That would be the better, cleaner way to do it. It accomplishes the same thing.
Yeah, it's simpler too. Okay. And then really quick, sorry, my question around the comp was, going back to your builder example, sometimes builders will offer out 4%, 5%. Once that's clearly offered, you're saying go ahead and enter into another agreement with them so you could take advantage of that, and everything's on the table. Everybody knows that they're not going to be on the hook for 5% if that's what the builder's offering. You're just going up to that amount.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to modify the agreement to charge more money. So, but there's no rule saying that you can't enter into a new agreement. So I would just say, hey, listen, I found out you're buying new construction. They're willing to pay out a buyer broker fee. This is what the fee is. I mean, I would properly disclose it, right? This is what the fee is. they're offering 4% on their inventory home. I tell you what, I'll give you 0.5% back. So that's towards your closing costs, or I can work you a great deal. That kind of thing. So as long as you have your buyer's permission and the buyer's in agreement that they're not paying it and that the seller's going to pay that, and you sign a new form, I think I'm fine with the new form replacing the other form. But you can't modify it, right? So that you can't modify the form because you can't modify the form up. You can modify the form down. So if let's say you, in your form, in your agreement, 3%, and the co-broke's being offered at 2.5%, you could easily modify this form, write down the 2%, and then also say that it's being paid by the seller in the form as well.
Got it. Thank you.
And once you verify that the seller and the selling brokerage is offering compensation, you are going to go ahead and get the broker-to-broker compensation agreement signed between the brokerages or between the brokerage and the builder. We want to make that crystal clear between the two brokerages that the compensation is coming from the seller. But that has nothing to do with the buyer, right? But we can attach that agreement to the buyer's contract, proving that the seller and the selling brokerage have agreed to pay the fee, and basically negates the buyer broker agreement. For example, okay, this is a quick learn. So when I meet with a buyer to get them to to sign the buyer broker agreement, I tell them, listen, in most cases, the really good, sharp, and smart agents out there are having the sellers pay a co-broke to the buyer's agent, to the buyer agent out there. Those are the properties you're really going to want to buy, and that'll also help us. And when we find one of those, for every property that you're interested in that I show you, if you want to make something that you might be interested in, I'm going to go ahead and get what's called a compensation agreement between the seller's brokerage and our brokerage, and have them sign that prior to us making your offer, so crystal clear if there's compensation being offered by the seller or the seller's brokerage, and I'll share that information with you, right? I want full disclosure with the buyer. And so I'm going to show them this form that's going to, that I'm going to be requesting the 3% to be paid, by the seller. And I said, so, I'm going to send this form over to whatever real estate company has the property that you're interested in making an offer on. So even though I'm having you sign this buyer broker agreement, I just want you to know we're going to also have the seller's realtor sign this form that says that they're going to pay your buyer broker fee. So that's going to be one of my closing techniques, is to use those two forms at this level, right? The showing agreement, I'm not worried about. Look, we're just dating today. Just sign here and I'll show you the house. Now this one, I'm working for you, right? And I'm going to go ahead and get the buyer broker things signed. And then again, the compensation thing, you can tell them, listen, here's my compensation form. If you find any properties that that you want to make an offer on, I'll find out if there's compensation being offered, so we can make sure that you're not paying them at all. All right, who else has questions?
I do. Elementary question. When you're renegotiating the agreement, does that automatically, by the fact of just renegotiating it and the newer date, cancel the prior agreement? Or do we have to put a notation in there stating that this cancels a prior agreement?
I just would write on the prior agreement canceled, and then write a whole new agreement. If it's again, if the compensation is for more money, and the agreement won't let you modify up, I just cancel this agreement, do the new agreement, because you already know the compensation is being paid by the seller. Have the compensation agreement being circulated around, and then also have the buyer sign a new buyer broker agreement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Kano, if I'm hearing you correct, it sounds like it should be standard operating procedure. So I have 7 listings. I should fill out 7 of these things, throw them in a folder, have them ready to go so that I can send them over to the other brokerage.
Yeah, so switching hats and talking about the listing side of the business, right? On the listing side of the business, for every listing that you have, if and again, we're encouraging everybody to still pay a co-broke fee, right? We just can't advertise it in the MLS. That's what the rule is. We just can't advertise it in the MLS. Just keep it simple, right? So you can't advertise it in the MLS. So I need to be able to tell the agent that's showing my property that we pay comp. Well, I'm going to do that as soon as my and Michael's policy is, as soon as you do a showing request, I get your email, your phone number, and which company you are through, showing time. It gets approved. As soon as I see your showing request on my listing, I'm going to email you or text you this form telling you that we're offering compensation. So you don't even have to think about it. I'm trying to cut down the work on the buyer's agent side of having to call all the agents to figure out if there's compensation. You want to show one of our properties? I'll tell you that there's compensation on it. So here's a great opportunity that's going to happen in the industry. If you're a strong listing agent, you're going to get a lot of extra calls as the confusion goes through the marketplace. The consumers are going to want to go directly to the listing agent because they think they're getting a better deal. Okay, so if you're a strong listing agent, this is a great time. Open houses are going to be a fantastic place to meet buyers because, again, they don't have to sign any documentations to go around to look at houses. Every house that they want to go look at with any other realtor from here on forward, they're going to have to sign documentation with somebody or they can't get in to see a house. So if you have open houses and the buyers are frustrated of having to sign agreements just to go look at houses, you bet your bippy they're going to be out there looking at open houses. All right, so this is what I mean. The change is going to open up lots of opportunities. Back to
I can
the
vouch for
form,
that.
though.
I don't know who else had an open house over the weekend, but I had 15 people through El Pavia in August. And I don't know if I had that combined on my last listing over there. So I saw a difference this weekend.
Yeah. So, so back to the form. Any questions on this? Now, some of you guys are going to be, bolder than others and ask for retainer. It's up to you. I know some are even going to ask for a higher percentage because they want to just be able to scale it down. Hey, my fee's 5%, and once I find out what the co-broke is, we'll lower it down to whatever that is. So my approach is to just do a whole new form if the seller's paying it. All right. I think you guys have it all down. Is this fairly simple?
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, make sure you go get some showing agreements. You know, keep them blank. You can easily jump in the car, meet someone at a house, have them sign this agreement out in front of the house, and you're legitimate. You're way to go. So what happens if you make a mistake and don't get something signed? Okay, you're not going to jail. They may try to find you, hit you with a fine, but at the moment, I don't think they're going to find anybody on the buyer side with the agreement. Okay, I think they're really going to police language in the MLS for using the word compensation and things like that. They're just going to police that side of it. So just get into the practice of getting your form signed up front. So one of the things that you're going to really want to think about is just having, your elevator pitch of what you want to say to somebody, your script, when it comes to the different forms. So I'm going to keep it quite simple. I'm going to say, hey, listen, you probably have heard, or if you haven't heard, the laws just changed on how we're able to show property. We're not even allowed to show a house now unless we have an agreement with the buyer. Even though most of the time the fee is actually paid by the seller and the seller's broker. And I'm going to, whenever we find a property that you're interested in and making an offer on, I'm going to find out if that listing agent is offering that fee, and we'll incorporate it in the contract so it won't cost you anything when I go to write up your contract. It'll come out of the seller's proceeds like it normally does. But I have to have this form just to be able to show you the house. You can cancel it at any time. I'm not trying to lock you in anything. We'll just, get this one signed. I'll show you a couple of houses. We'll see if we like each other. If we think we're a good fit, I'd love to go to work for you. If you don't think we're a good fit, I'm going to wish you well and happy home hunting. And that's it. I'm going to win some. I'm going to lose some. So what? That's what I do. And then I'm going to show them my value of being an agent. Right? And I'll tell them, I'll say, listen, once we work together a little bit, I'd like to actually, become a buyer broker agreement and officially go to work for you to find you a house. But, and again, you can cancel that at any time. And it just allows me to know that I can work for you for a certain period of time, and I'll dedicate a lot of time to look for the right property for you. But we can make that decision down the road. So that's going to be my two-prong approach.
Great pitches, great training, Kano. Thanks.
All right, everybody, keep it simple. And you'll have these forms sent out to you later on today. So you'll just, print them out, have them as a copy, go through, practice filling something out yourself, practice at least one time. And that way you get it down prior to doing it in front of a customer.